Welcome to the Haunting Chronicles, your destination for chilling tales that will send shivers down your spine. If you're ready for a terrifying and twisted story, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss a new haunting episode. Now let's dive into the story of the Phantom Lover. Phantom Lover. Emily was a quiet soul with a passion for books, cozy nights in, and a strong belief in the supernatural. Her love life, however, had been a series of missteps. After a string of disappointing dates and a few broken hearts, Emily decided to try her luck on a dating app. One evening, as she scrolled through the profiles, she came across a message from someone named Ethan. His profile picture was modest, a photo of him standing by a lake, a soft smile on his lips. There was nothing particularly striking about him, but something about his profile piqued her interest. His words were thoughtful, gentle, and comforting. The next evening, after a few days of chatting, they decided to meet at Ravenwood Cafe, a small, secluded cafe on the outskirts of town. Known for its vintage decor and intimate setting, the cafe was rumored to be haunted. But Emily, always curious about the supernatural, didn't think much of it. When she arrived, she was immediately struck by the eerie atmosphere. The cafe, though quaint, was dimly lit, with old wooden floors that creaked underfoot. The silence in the room felt oppressive, as though the walls themselves were listening. Ethan was already there, sitting in a corner booth. He stood up as she entered, his eyes lighting up with warmth. He was everything he promised to be. Handsome, soft-spoken, and intriguing. As they talked, Emily felt a deep connection growing between them. Something she hadn't felt with anyone before. Ethan listened to her every word with intense focus, making her feel like she was the most important person in the room. The conversation was easy, flowing like they had known each other for years. But as the evening wore on, something felt off. Emily couldn't pinpoint it, but there was a heaviness in the air. The cafe felt colder as the night deepened, the lights flickering occasionally, casting long shadows across the room. Ethan seemed unbothered by it, but Emily couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. She felt as if she were being watched by someone, or something else in the room. When Emily returned to her apartment that night, she couldn't stop thinking about Ethan. He had been charming, perfect even, but she couldn't ignore the feeling that something was lurking just beneath the surface. And as the days passed, the feeling only grew stronger. Ethan and Emily continued talking every night, and their bond deepened. But strange occurrences began happening. Emily would hear faint whispers when she was alone in her apartment, whispers that seemed to be coming from nowhere, but always familiar. Sometimes she'd feel a cold breeze pass over her skin when she was certain the windows were closed. But the strangest thing of all was the reflection of Ethan in the mirrors. Every time she passed a mirror, she saw him behind her, but when she turned around, he wasn't there. Emily dismissed it as her mind playing tricks there, but the sensation of being followed grew stronger, and the unease was unshakable. Her once peaceful apartment now felt like a haunted house. One night, Ethan invited Emily to meet him at the cafe again, but this time, something was different. The moment Emily walked through the door, she noticed the cafe was practically empty, with only the faint sound of a radio playing softly in the background. The air felt thick with tension. As they sat down, Ethan's behavior seemed off. His eyes were distant, and his smile didn't quite reach his eyes. He seemed more withdrawn, more pale than usual. Emily asked him if everything was all right, but Ethan only gave a vague response, saying he had been feeling tired lately. It was then that Emily noticed a peculiar detail. Ethan's reflection was no longer in the mirror behind him. Instead, there was a shadowy figure that seemed to hover around his chair, flickering in and out of sight. Emily felt a chill run down her spine, and for the first time, she felt a deep, paralyzing fear. That night, Emily's curiosity led her to do some research on Ravenwood Cafe. She uncovered something unsettling. Many years ago, a fire had ravaged the building, killing several people, including Ethan. She quickly realized the horrible truth. Ethan was not alive. He had been dead for years, and the connection they shared wasn't love. It was a ghostly bond that reached across the veil of death. Horrified, Emily sought out answers, finding that the only way to sever the connection was through a ritual that could break the bond between the living and the dead. But the ritual came at a cost. Someone had to sacrifice something dear to them. Desperate, Emily decided to face Ethan one last time. She agreed to meet him at the cafe, and this time, she had a plan. As the night deepened, she reached into her bag and pulled out a bottle of alcohol, knowing what she had to do. "I'm sorry, Ethan," she whispered to herself, her hands trembling. "But you need to go." She poured the alcohol onto the wooden floor, setting it in a circle around them. As Ethan watched, confusion flickering in his eyes, Emily lit a match and dropped it to the ground. The fire exploded instantly, consuming the floor beneath them. The flames grew wild and uncontrollable, and Ethan screamed in pain as the fire began to burn his ghostly form. As the fire raged, Emily tried to escape, but the heat was unbearable. She stumbled toward the door, hearing Ethan's voice calling her name, faint and desperate. But she didn't turn back. The building erupted in flames, and as Emily ran into the night, she could see the specters of those lost in the fire reaching toward Ethan, pulling him into the inferno. He was gone. But even after the fire was extinguished and the cafe was nothing more than ash, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that Ethan was still with her. The nightmares began, visions of Ethan's face staring at her from the shadows, his voice calling her name in the dead of night. She thought she had freed herself, but in truth, the connection between them was far from severed. One night, as Emily lay in bed, she received a message from him. "I'm still here, Emily. Come find me." That's the story of the Phantom Lover, a love that